Republicans and Democrats have promised us the world. Medicare for all, no child left behind, equity, safer streets, and police reform, an end to the housing crisis, a more peaceful world, and a sound economy. Government is the barrier to all of these things. If you're sick of the lies, fancy slogans, and broken promises, then join us in the Libertarian Party and help bring a real free market to the U.S. and help set every individual free. LP.org. That's LP.org.
Hello, and welcome back to the Liberty Blues Network. I'm Shawn Osborne, and joining me again today is James Sceniak. It's been a while. How's it going?
Yeah, I think it was 4 years ago you interviewed me. I'm excited to be talking about another race I'm running. We have great things happening in Indiana and great things happening for candidates. So I'm excited to talk about my race as well as what's happening here in Indiana.
You know, before we got on here, you had asked me what my favorite podcast I've ever done was. And I talking to you guys back there in Indiana is some of my favorite podcasts. You know, you guys really, you guys always put forward a lot of really good candidates. And, you know, I really appreciate that. You know, you guys do a lot of good work over there.
We are very serious in Indiana about running quality candidates and getting the Liberty message out to have a true option for Hoosiers. So it's exciting to be part of this movement and part of this party. I was looking through some of your past podcasts, and you've had some great ones on. Lori for Liberty, who's running for Secretary of State. You had Rainwater on, who actually got 10% of the vote. I think that was in 2020. Yeah. So your podcast has highlighted quite a bit of what's happening in Indiana.
Yeah, I love to get people on running for office. You know, we got to get some more options out there. And so you're running for the seventh district in the House of Representatives, right?
I am, and I'm excited. This is a different congressional district than I just moved towards this direction. So it covers Indianapolis and Central Indiana. We've had a long incumbent there. So I'm excited to present a different message for the people of Indianapolis, one that shows sympathy and empathy to what they're facing, one that is anti-war, and one, you know, the strongest talking point is lower taxes for those in Indianapolis. So I can do a lot of things on the federal level to reduce government involvement, and I'm really hyped for what November will bring.
Yeah, that everybody needs to hear that anti-war message and lowering taxes, because man, they got us paying for all this stuff overseas, whether it be by our tax money or the inflation, which everybody knows is the tax too. You know, to pay for all this garbage. Who's the incumbent over there?
Andre Carson, and he's been I can't recall what year, but he's been in a while now. Even he's actually being primaried, so it looks like he'll probably have it, but even some of the Democrats aren't quite happy with him. So I think there's room where people want something different. They just don't know what that different is, and so that's what I have to show them.
You know, it's funny. I guess I just assumed it was a Republican. Seeing that Indiana's got a super majority, but I forget. You know, places like Indianapolis do lean more Democrat.
Yep. So we have 9 congressional seats. 7 of them are Republican. It's a very Republican state. But the one in Indianapolis is Democrat. And then up in the region by Chicago, we have another congression that goes Democrat.
Okay. So what are the policies that you think the Democrats are failing on there in your area?
I mean, everything. I think that they're not having the alternative voice. They could actually highlight a lot of things about not just an anti-Trump message, but highlight what they're going to do for people. And right now, you know, people are facing some of the highest gas prices. They're facing having to afford food on their table. And the luxury items are starting to dwindle. So really the Democrats could get back to the root of helping people, but I think libertarians help people better. So
Yeah.
I hope I don't help them with their message, because I love the message that we bring of volunteerism and how we actually reach out in community through non-government intervention. It's actually a better way because there's no third party to help. It's a direct helpline. So even though the Democrats could do a lot better, I think we can even do better at doing better. So.
Yeah, that unfortunately their message is always let's do better with government, and it just doesn't work. One size doesn't fit all the way government tends to work.
Right. And I am 100% convinced that we have no anti-war party. I think there
Oh
was
yeah,
an underlying message at one point with some of the Democrats on that, but they've completely lost that too. So I've given
yeah,
that alternative to voters. I believe there is um, a strong amount of constituents that really want to see our money going to those in the states, and this war machine is just becoming too much, and the burdensome to our soldiers, the PTSD we see, the homeless rates of soldiers, their poor medical. So all these things are because of our wars, and I think people really want an anti-war message.
yeah. It's funny because people say, "Oh, you can't say anything about the troops, this and that, if you go against the war." I'm not against the troops. I'm against the war. And really, if people were really that concerned about the troops, they would do something about all the homeless veterans we got here in Los Angeles. Because I mean, it's a disaster area.
I mean, you said better than I did. If we really want to help the troops, let's not send them out to battles they don't need to fight.
Yeah,
I 100% back the troops. I believe we do need a strong defense, but we can do better for veterans, and that includes. I ran on vet care. That includes creating a better medical system for them. So what VetCare would do is open up their system and allow them to be able to choose better doctors, allow them to be able to choose better hospitals with actually reducing taxes. So it's kind of a win for voters as well as a win for taxpayers and a win for soldiers. So I think there's ways we can definitely help and support our soldiers, but also not be pro-war and pro-military intervention in all the world's affairs.
yeah. I mean, a lot of the conservatives like to start saying, "Oh, Trump's putting an end to this 47-year war," as if, or whatever, how many years I forgot it was. Yeah, 47. If they were saying, Trump's put an end to this 47-year-old war, as if history began in 1979, as if it wasn't our intervention that has caused the problem. People over there don't hate us because we're free. That's a complete and utter bag of garbage. They hate us because we blow up their kids and tear their lives apart and tell them how to run their lives.
Well, and that's the whole thing of the history of war, right? Whether it's the Americans at war or Ukrainians, Russians, no matter who's at war, civilians pay the price. And we
Mm-hmm.
look at the whole school, and I'm not even going to quote a number because I can't remember the numbers on it, but children were tragically killed. So
Yeah,
civilians pay the cost. That's been in every single war, and it's a consequence of war that creates further um, hatred and violence in the future. So, I know 100% if a country came in here and bombed the kids I raised their school, I'm gonna hate them for a very, very long time. So,
yeah,
absolutely, the price of war is great, and civilians are the highest cost of that.
yeah. It's wild, and then you don't even think about. I mean, all the sanctions we've had on Iran and how many people have died over there because of that as well. I mean, there's like I said, there's a reason they hate us. Um, and I mean, I don't like hearing anybody chant "Death to America" either. But at some point in time, you got to understand. Even Sun Tzu says it in The Art of War. You got to understand your enemy. If you don't understand them, then you have no chance of ever being victorious.
Absolutely. I love that you brought up The Art of War. That's a great book that everybody should read at some point. But
Yeah.
you do have to understand. You have to understand that on the other side, they are people as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they hold grudges as well. And they want the best for themselves as well. And, um, I like you said, nobody wants to see a hatred for America, but on a world scale, a lot of our interventions have created some of that hatred. So we can definitely do better with our how we represent ourselves to the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, other than anti-war stuff, what's some other issues in Washington that drive you nuts and make you want to go over there and turn some tables over?
I mean, it's the effect of our taxes and that, you know, how they're spent and the accountability of how they're spent. They're buying lobsters um, and shrimp and all this and racking up bills. And that all comes down to those who barely can afford to put groceries on their table. Went grocery shopping and had a fourth of a cart, and the price on that was $100. And it's crazy that Washington, D.C. can spend reckless amounts of money and not even consider what the average American is having to do right now. And so, a lot of libertarians want to immediately reduce all taxes and all waste. And, I understand the sentiment, but right now I'm just looking to restrain that spending, looking to ways that we can balance the budget and ways that we can impact future generations, because they're going to have to face this debt. They're going to have to figure out how to put us back into economic sanity. So I need to give them a head start on that. And I'm really concerned that not just the kids that, I'm raising, but their kids, what impact our decisions now are making on those. And I want to give them a better America than we have right now. And one of the ways is to restrain that spending. As well as reduce the federal policy on individual Americans' lives, right? There's a lot of needless policy that is on the federal level that we can bring back to state level, and where people can have more impact in their voting and more decision making. I think your strongest form of government, if we want to argue any form of government, should be your local government. And then, the state should have less power, and the federal level should really just be about making sure that policies are fair, that give equal opportunity for liberty and justice for all. So the federal government should have very minimal impact on an individual life. So that's been my message through all of my runs as a libertarian.
Yeah, I love it. So I would go out on a limb and say, then you would be definitely for getting rid of the Department of Education and things like that, as were promised by, some other people that failed miserably at doing what they said they were going to do.
Well, in the Department of Education, what's interesting about it, there's one policy from them that it's hard to touch on because they did a lot for disabilities. And I actually work a lot with autism. But other than that, they have been a complete failure. Our education has actually gone down. Our standards have gone down. What people are coming out on a 12th grade education with is not the 12th grade education of a couple generations ago. So we've actually seen a decline in individuals' logic and processing and being able to compete mathematically with other countries, compete. So I don't think on the federal level that we have done well for the education, and I would like to see a lot of that brought back to the states.
Yeah, I think so too. Me as a blind person, legally blind, they had very, very little resources when I went to school in Indiana for a blind person. I basically had to have sometimes like a librarian would just read stuff to me. Then they finally got different teachers that could read stuff to me in high school, but junior high school, there was nothing. Some of the teachers really worked hard themselves to try to help me out with things. But yeah, there was nothing. Then they kind of discouraged me from taking advantage of what I was good at, music and stuff like that. So I think schools in general just need to, whatever, and whenever a person's at some level, that's where they need to work with them at, and teach them their skills and teach them how to learn. And too much school just doesn't do that anymore.
Right.
I'm a big fan of John Taylor Gatto. He was a great educator.
On the topic of education, my mom was an educator. She actually homeschooled me and then she's taught private and in public schools. But her favorite quote, and I'm not going to remember who it's by at the moment, but it says, "Education is not the filling of a bucket, but the lighting of a fire." So education should be about lighting that fire, and if that's music, if that's mathematics and robotics, if that's helping other people through helping fields or nursing or doctors, we should be lighting that fire for our students. And I don't see that enough in the way the government is teaching our students.
Yeah, yeah. Out here in LA, we have a terrible school system. It's garbage. I mean, I can't even remember how many kids they said dropped out and just never came back after they did all their lockdowns and stuff. So it's a disaster. Indiana, I think, has a little bit better. Like, you have a little bit more choice and stuff. I think, like, the tax dollars and follow the kids a little bit more. But yeah, it'd be great if Indiana had control of their own education. They could, if everybody was free, then I think it would actually do a lot to get rid of culture wars. Because if everybody has the right to get educated, their children the way they want, people stay out of each other's business. That's about as libertarian as it gets.
It is school choice. Indiana has done well on school choice. So that is one positive thing in Indiana. And like you mentioned, the money does follow the child to a certain extent. So, that does help allow people to have more freedom with their tax dollars and their educational choices. So I want to continue those kind of messages on the federal level of how we really can allow students to compete with a better education, and that's competitive education. That's looking at Montessori schools. It's looking at education that happens at home. It's looking at the private schools, and even what we can do on government schools as well to give more focused. If we're going to pay any taxes at all, our money should be more focused on that student. So how we can better do that within education.
Yeah. So who's the Republican that's running? Is there even a Republican in it?
So there's two Republicans, and I can't even remember their name, and they're legitimately no-name Republicans.
Really?
Generally speaking, if a Republican is going to run in the 7th, it's going to be someone who just wants to fill a spot on a ballot, maybe get a little bit of name recognition from running a race. But the two names that were on it, I didn't even recall any past history. So I'll have to do a little bit of research on them. I'm not really concerned. I honestly don't think they're going to run a great race. So I almost want to believe that I can make it really essentially two parties running for this spot. And I actually believe that could happen in the 7th district with the right messaging.
Yeah, that's nice. How would you say? I mean, obviously you're coming out as a libertarian, you're not pandering, but like there in the 7th district, since it is more Democrat, have you been talking to more conservatives to try to get them to not vote Republican, or liberals on the other side, or a little bit of both?
Well, I've noticed that my libertarian message resonates with both sides. And when I ran for U.S. Senate, one of the best counties I did well in was Marion County. And I think that's because it's been the place I work. It's the place that I've lived. It's the place where they've seen me show up in their community. I think that on top of it, I don't shy away from, I don't call myself a left or right Republican, but I don't shy away from topics that appeal to both, right? So I talk a lot about tax reduction. That really appeals to the Republican side. I talk about limited government. That appeals to the Republican side. But I also show up in the community and talk about the rights in the 14th Amendment and how the government should stay out of bedrooms, and how medical rights are individual rights, and that politicians shouldn't pretend to practice as physicians, how we really have a lot of individual rights and freedoms that need to be championed on the federal level. So I don't shy away from talking points from both sides. And I find that I actually can appeal to both sides. It is kind of funny at times. The hardcore right will call me super liberal, and the hardcore liberals will call me super conservative. But I really, I find my message is extremely attractive to those who are in the middle and want to give thought to their vote.
Well, 70% of Americans, or it's well over 70. I mean, it's been over 70 for probably a decade, that want more choices. So it's nice that you're being out there to be able to get that message out there, because really, I think there is a big realignment politically. Like the Democrat Party's obviously going more towards the progressive side in one way, but also part of it's becoming a little bit more Republican, as Trump was a former Democrat, so a lot of his policies are nothing but Democrat policies with tariffs and things like that. So I really do see that there is a big realignment of people. And I think it's a perfect opportunity for libertarians to get out that message of real anti-war messages that, like as you started off talking about, with empathy to deal with the issues that people have to deal with. I'll put our ideas up against anybody, anybody in their BS that they like to spout out and platitudes and stuff. Man, the Democrats here are just crazy with the platitudes. It's just crazy. They act like, giving a land acknowledgement somehow makes things better for people and things like that. It's just ridiculous. All a bunch of virtue signaling. But I think libertarians and our individual ideas, really resonate with people. And I love the fact that we can reach out to people from the left and the right.
Yeah, and I mean, I know, some of the infighting, but I think when we look at the common ground of even the sides of the libertarian scale, we really need to come together about just the fact that we all want less government in our bedrooms. We want less government in our wallets. We want less government in our homes. And ultimately, if we look at the core message, I think we have the best message to voters. So we need to focus on those things that really align with the everyday person and not focus on the weeds as much.
Yeah. How much is gas going for there in Indianapolis these days?
I think it was $3.59 the last time I filled. So it's we actually have the 5th highest gas tax in the U.S. So again, something else that gets taxed, and we have terrible roads. So I don't know where all that money's going.
Yeah, California, we got I think probably the highest gas tax. I can't remember what it was, and it's supposed to go to fixing. It's either supposed to go to fixing the roads or the schools. I can't remember which one, but it's not doing either of them, whatever it's supposed to be doing. So
it seems like they get people on board with a good idea of where this tax is going, and then they redistribute it to wherever benefits them the most.
Yeah, it's like a shell game. There's a gas station here close to my house. It makes the news all the time, but it's close to Union Station, and the gas there is over $8 a gallon here. But I don't think I think it's usually about probably a little over $5. So much more expensive than it is there. But definitely not the $8 they might report some places. But I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't get up to $8 with all the madness they got going on all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, we look at the consequences of war and what that's doing to oil, and it's going to hurt everyday pockets, and then it's going to have a trickle-down effect because people aren't going to be able to spend on luxury items. They're not going to be able to go out to eat, so you're going to have less waiters and waitresses, and then they have less money to spend. So it's just a whole trickle-down effect when gas prices become that high, and it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure everything's going to be just massively expensive, and I think California's even got refineries that are closing more, so I think it's just going to get worse for us here. And when those prices go up, prices of everything go up every place. And then as you're stating with the war, it's not our tax money necessarily paying for the war. They're paying for it with inflation. They're printing money and making your savings and your earnings worth less. And that's just, I don't think so many people recognize that.
Inflation is just a fancy word for tax. I mean, it's a different type of tax, but it makes your money less valuable. So instead of taxing you directly where you feel like you're given 10 cents, they now make your dollar 90 cents. So you still have that dollar, but it's not a dollar. So it's just a fancy word for a different type of tax.
Yeah. People should look up how much silver goes into a Tomahawk missile. I mean, and think of when they blow that precious metal up, it's gone, and how much money they spend on each one of these missiles they're dropping in Iran. It's wild to think about, and horrible at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What other things you want to talk about, like what are going on in Indiana, like what the people are dealing with there?
Um, there's, we talk a lot about in the Libertarian Party, the immigration issue. And for me, that's a very personal issue. I have siblings that are immigrants. I have, um, you know, a lot of family members that are immigrants. And I think that we can approach that as well with empathy and understand that we can have borders. I do believe that. I know that's not every libertarian's view, but how we enforce and how we go about doing this with ICE is just absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
It's a government overreach. They're trying to come into areas without warrants. They're not doing it with due process. So there's a lot of topics within this topic that is absolutely wrong and against our constitutional rights. So that's another huge one in Indiana right now. ICE is putting up a center in Carmel, so it's not in the 7th district, but it's right outside the 7th district. And so the consequences of that, I think, is going to be heavy. And I think that's an important topic right now with the environment that we're in.
Yeah. It's when Americans are getting shot in the face by federal agents, it's things are not headed in the right direction.
No.
Yeah.
And the way, I mean, again, like we can talk about what needs to happen for immigrants to come here the right way, but how we're enforcing it is 100% wrong. And I don't know how anybody can be on board with, like you said, citizens getting shot and warrantless searches, people arrested at their jobs that are legal.
Yeah.
And it's tragic, and we need to approach it with knowing that we have to do better on our laws of how people get here legally, and we have to do it better on how we see them with due process and give our constitutional rights to everybody in America.
Yeah, I remember not too long ago, it was like, should an immigrant be allowed to have a gun? The Libertarian Party is like, everybody should be able to have a gun. That's a natural right. So that's not given by government.
It is. So I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I agree. Shouldn't make it difficult for somebody who generally wants to come here and work. That, I mean, like they were here in Los Angeles, they were busting people working at Home Depot and stuff like that. I was like, that's just wholly unnecessary. They're not out causing problems. So there's no reason for somebody to be harassed who's not causing a problem.
Well, and what the media is known for doing is taking one individual, one individual who is selling cocaine, or one individual who got their CDL license and hit someone with a truck. And they take that and they put that label on all immigrants. And if we practice that with every individual, if we said, oh, because you are of this category and because one person did that, all of you are guilty, we would all throw a fit. We got to treat this as individual issues, and it's not all immigrants coming and doing that. Many have good intentions, many want to assimilate, many want to learn our language, but all those things do take time, and it's not going to be immediate when they come. They're still going to hold on to parts of their culture, and that's perfectly okay. That's part of America, is we have many cultures within America. So I think we have to look at it as, again, individual people who want to come, want to work, want to be a part of the American dream. My family, I think it's 4 generations ago, immigrated. So most of us come from immigrant families, and we can track some of that immigration. So we have to remember what this issue truly is about. And America does best when there's diversity within it.
Yeah. I think one thing we could do educationally, obviously, I feel the state should do it, or even the community, is teach kids languages when they're younger. I was talking about this on another episode. I would love it if we saw kids learning to speak different languages, like say regional languages or business languages when they're younger, So like say when they do come across people from different cultures, it's not so culture shock. They don't feel somehow left out because they can't understand this or that. I think Americans have to really understand what the future looks like, and it's probably a lot better to speak more than one language, be able to communicate good ideas to people.
And most of the world practices that already.
Yeah.
America's kind of behind on that
Yeah.
subject. But no matter what you want to go into, right? If you want to go into computers and technology, learn German. If you want to go into business, learn Chinese. If you want to go talk to many of your neighbors, learn Spanish.
Yeah.
It doesn't fall all on the other party to learn English. We can also learn other languages.
Yeah, I think it makes us a better people because, being empathetic. I mean, I speak some Japanese, and I understood when I learned that language that there are just things that don't translate well. They have a certain meaning in the language, and that's you can express something better in one language, and different thought processes come out of language. Same thing with music. Different languages have different cadences and things like that. You learn these languages, you learn more communication skills. You understand, it's good for the brain too. But I mean, you learn so much about, thought processes in different cultures, and you can have more understanding of your neighbor if you can talk to them.
Exactly. And I mean, there's so much beauty in language. I'm gonna blank on which one, but the romantic language is Italian. But there's so much beauty within people's languages. So it teaches you about their culture, teaches you about we use a lot of words in kind of an ugly way. And I don't mean that as like insulting, but like the way we formed words in English don't always translate well out. So learning other people's culture through their language is a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think so too. Yep. Can you think of anything else you want to talk about before we start to wrap it up here?
Just the whole message that we can do better on the ballot. And you mentioned earlier that a lot of you said 70% want a third party option, and we see that continually in polls. So as libertarians, we can do better with our branding, with our messaging, to appeal to that 70%, because clearly they're not even looking at libertarians as part of that independent polls, because they're like, we don't even see a third party. So as libertarians, I want to encourage those who are watching that we do have a vast majority of people that we can reach and then win elections, but we have to do better on branding. We have to do better on coming together on common ground, and we have to not use this litmus test that forces people to align a certain way within libertarianism. We have to have a broader umbrella. But when we do that, we can win elections, and I believe we can win it on the local level, the federal level, and someday we'll see us really compete on the presidential level as well. So I want to encourage your viewers to really, the ones that are already libertarian, to really work on that branding, to really look on the common issues of their neighbors. Get in your neighborhood and find out what they're passionate about. There's a libertarian message that aligns with what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And then to your non-libertarian viewers, I just want you to encourage you to look at, has the government done more for you or less for you? And have they taken more out of your wallet? Have they stifled ways for you to grow, whatever that might be? What are ways that we can reduce the government interference in your personal life? And look to the libertarian message, because we are the only ones who are looking at reducing that government level, especially on the federal level, from you as an individual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The last thing you want is to be dependent on government, man. Because I try to tell my more progressive friends that you give government all this power, you don't know who's going to be in charge of that power 5-10 years down the road, or when you're old. You know.
And when you give the government the power, right? We've seen a strong attack on the First and Second Amendment.
Yeah.
I want to believe that they'll. I want to believe that people are constitutional minded, but we've seen strong attacks on those. So the more power you give to the more you take from the government, the more power you're given over your individual freedoms as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, do you want to let people know where they can reach you on social media?
Yeah, so James Sceniak, 2026. You'll be able to find me on Facebook there. And then Instagram is James Sceniak as well. My website will be up and coming. I'll announce it on both of those social medias. But for now, follow me on social media and look for ways to get involved in my campaign. There'll be ways to donate, volunteer, or even help me. No matter where you are at in the country, you'll be able to help me reach voters within the 7th district. So I encourage you all to check me out on those social media platforms.
Yeah, I encourage my listeners, like if you're even in another state and you don't have a libertarian to donate to, donate to one that's out there in another state, help fight someplace else, get out there. But if you're in Indiana, you see things the way we see it here, things aren't going well, and the Republicans and Democrats aren't really doing anything good for us. Get out there and help. If you don't see anybody else doing it, get up and do it. Other people will follow.
Absolutely.
Liberty ain't free,
No.
You got to fight for it. Damn it.
Exactly.
So, well, like I really appreciate you running for office and being so dedicated to it. And I guess as it gets a little closer to the election, let's get you back on here and see how things are going.
All right, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate your podcast. So,
yeah.
Thanks again for having me.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. All right, and thanks everybody for listening to Liberty Blues Network. You can follow me on X at Mad Shawn Osborne. On the Liberty Blues Network on Facebook. This Might Make You Mad on Instagram. And check out my music wherever you stream music. My latest album is Free People. You can also check out other libertarian musicians on Indietarian on Spotify. They have a few playlists that feature libertarian musicians. We'd love it if you got on there and helped us out with the algorithms and listen to a few tunes, pick out a couple that you like, and add them to your playlist and help support libertarian-minded musicians. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Liberty Blues.